Okay, what is up, y'all? Welcome. Kind of wobbling my microphone. All right, what is up, y'all? Welcome to the Whole Lot of Jesus podcast. This is a podcast where we talk all about testimonies. I'm your host, Carley, and this is our last episode talking about college and how to pay for it in cash. We have been doing this really cool series called From Student to Graduate, the Debt-Free Way, where I kind of share with y'all and give you some advice, some tips, and just some things that I learned on how to get your school paid for completely in cash, to cash flow it through scholarships and work and different things like that. And so this is our last episode. April is always Financial Literacy Month, and so usually during that month we celebrate the learning and the growing in personal finance. And so I just thought that it was very beneficial to really help you talk about, how to pay for college, because this is an expense that is major in our lives. Most of us will probably go or have some type of higher education outside of high school once we graduate, and it can be a burden and feel overwhelming to have to pay for that. And so I wanted to offer this as kind of a guide to help you know, like, hey, if you want to pay for it in cash, that is possible. The Lord definitely provides, and here is a way to do that. Here are systems and methods that I personally used and the Lord blessed me with in order for me to pay for school in cash. And not only did I have my bachelor's paid for in cash, but I also had my master's paid for completely in cash. And we are actually cash flowing my husband's master's, and I might one day go get my doctorate. And if I do, or if he goes and gets his doctorate, we're going to cash flow that as well. And so it is possible. I'm not saying that it's easy. And if you've been watching this series, you know that, there are some sacrifices that you're going to have to make, but they are definitely worth it. From someone who's on the other side, we don't have student loan payments. And I just want to say, you might be thinking, well, Carley, they're only going to be like $200 a month, $300 a month, and they make it to where it can be income based, especially if you have federal funding. Federal student loans. You can do what is called income based, where your payment is actually based on how much you make. And the red flag with doing it that way is you are barely paying the interest rate a lot of times when you do income based, because when you graduate, you're not going to be getting paid as high as the median salary is. Usually you come in at a lower level, an entry level, and yes, you might get paid a little bit more than someone who doesn't have a college degree, but you're still not getting paid a whole lot. And so, because you don't have years of experience, and so your income-based payment might be low, but you're not going to make any progress on your student loan payments most of the time. Because again, guys, no matter what loan you have, it's a loan. So it's going to have interest, which means you might have taken out $20,000 to pay for school, but that interest is going to cause you to pay $27,000 and more like that. And, maybe I'll do an episode talking about debt, talking about interest rates, talking about how they work. If you're interested in that and you want to know about that, just let me know. But today we are going to be talking and comparing college prices, and I'm going to kind of be explaining the difference between D1, D2, D3, NAIA, junior colleges, and their costs. And we're actually going to look at a website that you can use where you compare colleges. You compare their graduation rates, their acceptance rates, how much they cost per year, and different things like that, their ACT, what they accept in their scores, and different things like that. And so I'm excited to get into this episode because I think a lot of times we pick our school that we want to go to not based on knowledge and the education that we've done and the research behind it, but based on just where do I want to go, what's around the area, what have I heard of, maybe my parents went to this school, maybe I have a lot of friends going to this school, whatever it is. And I do think a part of picking your school, it needs to be based on what you're majoring in, but I'm going to be honest and be very blunt about this. I learned a lot I went to a D2 school and I majored in graphic design and marketing. I learned a lot. Like, I learned things, but I'm going to be honest. Most of my education and most of my knowledge that I have now wasn't from the school. The school just kind of helped guide me. I learned so much from internships, from jobs that I had through college that were around what I was majoring in, through jobs that I had after college that were around what I had majored in. And so I want to say, yes, like, if there's a certain school that you want to go to because of a certain field that you're wanting to go in, I had a good friend who majored in marine biology. Not every school has marine biology, okay? You kind of got to be close to the ocean to have marine biology. And so there are certain places, certain colleges that only take certain degrees and are focused on certain categories. And we're going to kind of get into that today. But I want to say as a general statement that most colleges generally have the general degree that you're going to major in, and don't think it's going to determine the rest of your life whether you go to this school or not. It's not. A lot of your experience and a lot of what you gain is actually from real life adulthood, having a job. And I'm just going to be honest, it's only 4 years. So you going to college is such a small part of your life. Why are you taking out so much debt for this tiny itty bitty part of your life? It is so micro compared to the rest of your life that you're probably going to live. Your life expectancy is so many years past that. And so I think that it's foolish of us to take out so much debt for something that was only 4 years of our life. That is gone just like that. So let's get into today's episode. And I will say, if y'all enjoy this, I try to do some YouTube series. I try to do some vlogs. Please like and share this and subscribe. This is, especially this series, this is about educating the American people, our young generation, letting us know that the only option for college is not necessarily debt. You can do it in a cash flowing way. And that's really the hope through this series, is just to let you know, like, hey, somebody's done it. The Lord has provided. It can be done. And here's how. So really quick, I'm going to explain the major types of colleges that we have in America. So you have the NCAA, which stands for the National Collegiate Athletic Association. So I just want to let you know that all, if not the majority, of colleges, their scale of D1, D2, D3, NAIA, all of that, that is based on primarily athletics and a little bit of academics. But primarily it's based on your athletics. Okay, so the National Collegiate Athletic Association, NCAA, has 3 divisions. Your D1, which is your big schools, think of Texas Tech, University of Arkansas, OSU, things like that. The big experiences, they're the schools that you just want to go to. You're just like, man, I want to have this cool experience, all that kind of stuff. That's D1. They're huge. They're also very costly. D2 is kind of this middle ground where it's still competitive. We ran at a D2 school, but it's on a smaller scale. It's like way cheaper. You don't have as many students going to that school. And so if you don't like a lot of people, I highly recommend D2 because it's bigger than a community college, but it's not overwhelmingly big like a D1 school. And then you have D3, which D3 schools do not offer athletic scholarships, just letting you know, but they do have sports, and they are at also a much smaller scale than D2 and D1. And again, the division that you're in, it involves athletics, it involves academics, it also involves your aid. So how many scholarships, how many teams do you have, your budget, things like that. It all plays into effect of what division you're in for the NCAA. Now, I'm going to compare real quick the University of Arkansas and Arkansas State University. So Arkansas State University is a small D1 college. So it's not as big or as fancy as the U of A, University of Arkansas, but it's still categorized as D1. So even within the D1 category, there are small D1s and there are large D1s. I think Tarleton, which is in the Dallas area, that is another good example because they're a small D1 college, whereas like Baylor or where else? Other schools, anyways, other schools, they're bigger. So there is small D1, big D1. Then you have what's the NAIA. And the one example that I can give of that, which we're going to actually look at later, is Wayland Baptist University. We would go to cheer camp there. And the difference is just the eligibility and the athletic rules that fall under it. These are organizations that kind of oversee the athletic programs that are put on by these schools. And so they just have different rules and different things, different training agendas. NAIA. Then you have the National Junior College Athletic Association, which is like NCAA, but it has junior in it, so it's a 2-year school, not a 4-year school. D1, D2, D3, and NAIA are all 4-year schools, and a junior college is a 2-year school, very similar to a community college. You go there for 2 years. They are usually the lowest priced schools. They're not as big, they're not as fancy, and so I just wanted to clarify that for y'all. Now, I think it's very important when we're looking at your school that you want to pick, really ask yourself, okay, what type of person am I? Of course, you need to pray and ask the Lord where to go, but you also need to ask yourself, like, do I see myself on a D1 campus with so many kids? I say kids now because I'm older, but so many students running around where I will say, guys, I'm kind of going to go into the pros and cons of the different types of school, but a D1 school, odds are you're not going to be close to your professor because your professor is going to have over 500 students. Maybe in one classroom, you might have 300 students. I mean, the ratio between professor and student is astronomical for D1 compared to D2, D3, and the rest of them. One thing that I loved about D2 is I knew my professors. Like, for my major, I knew them, they knew me. Over the years, over the 4 years, we got close. And so I felt comfortable enough to go to them for questions, for internships, for opportunities. They would come to us, students, if they felt like we should, they would present us opportunities like, hey, this business reached out, are you interested in this or whatever. So that is kind of a difference between D1 and D2. I know D1 is so glamorized on television that, it's the experience and, blah, blah, whatever, right? They advertise it very well. But I will say, you really need to sit down and think, what is my desire for going to college? Do I want to have close friends? Do I want to know my professor? Do I want to be on like a lower, softer scale than D1? Or do I want that crazy experience? And I can't tell you, I didn't go to a D1 school, so I can't explain, how that is because I didn't go there, but I can explain how a D2 school is, and I can also give you the facts about like the ratio and different things like that to kind of help you navigate, like, should I pursue this? Should I not pursue this? So I think it's very important when you're picking a school to really ask yourself, like, what is it? What kind of atmosphere, what kind of environment do I desire? Junior colleges and community college get so much backlash. Like, I remember being in high school, and I remember I had a couple friends and a couple classmates going to a community college, and there are 2 different community colleges, and they were going there, and I remember we looked so much down upon them because they were going there and they weren't going to this big, bougie, fancy school that the rest of us wanted to go to. And that was the time where I was still thinking I was going to Texas Tech University. And I look back on that experience and I'm like, Carley, like, they had school paid for. They were going to a community college, smart and wisely, to get school paid for, and then if they wanted to advance and do other education, they could. But the community college had a cosmetology program. It had a radiology program. It had these different programs that they were wanting to pursue for a career. Why the heck should they go to a D1 school, spend 4 years, waste all this money, when this school that they costs way less for them, that they know that they can get close to their professors in, that it can be a tight-knit community in, that's still nice, because guys, there are some community colleges and JUCO schools that are very nice, okay? They just aren't as big or bougie as the D1 schools. And so I want you to really think about, like, why do I want to go there? What's my desire? What am I trying to fulfill with going to school? And again, please keep in mind, just like Ecclesiastes says, please keep in mind, it is literally 4 years. It's 4 years. I know when you're picking a school, 4 years seems like such a long time. But it is not. It goes by so fast. And I wish you understood how fast it goes by. Because I remember graduating and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I thought college was going to last a whole lot longer than it did. And so just keep that in mind when you're picking a school. So I'm going to kind of give you some average costs for the different types of schools. Now, I did not explain, and I kind of will explain real quick. You have in-state schools, which is in the state that you live in, that you graduated high school from. Sorry, I hit the desk. That you graduated high school from. The in-state schools, so if you graduated high school from Texas, all the Texas schools, there are schools that are in the next state that will waive out-of-state tuition. If you live, within a certain radius of that school. So if you're like, my husband's from Gainesville, Texas. It is like 15 minutes from the Oklahoma border. If you went to a school in Oklahoma, they probably would waive you if you were from Gainesville because you're so close to the border. So you have in-state schools. Then you have out-of-state schools, which are outside the state. And I don't know why. Maybe we can look up the history later. But they charge an out-of-state fee. That for some schools, guys, is astronomical. I mean, it is like crazy how much they charge for you to go out of state. And you really have to weigh the costs. Like, if you can get that paid for and you want to go out of state and you can get it completely paid for, go for it. I'm not saying you shouldn't go out of state, and I'm not saying you shouldn't go D1. What I'm saying is just have it paid for, not through loans. That's what I'm saying. So if you can have it paid for, by all means, go do it. But a lot of people can't because it's so much added. It's just this extra expense that you could avoid if you go to an in-state school. So they have that. Then they have public schools. Public schools are funded by the federal government. This is like so interesting. I hope you're interested by this, but they're funded by the federal government, which means they do a report, an annual report. It's just like public schools. They do a report and they get a certain amount of funding based on graduation rates, based on, attendance, like how many people enrollment rates, based on a whole circumstance of different things. I'm sure the athletic program gets a certain amount of money based on how they perform, all the different stuff. They get a certain amount of money from the federal government, allots to them, based on certain rates. That's public schools. Private schools are just like a private school from K through 12. Theirs is donors. They don't get federal funding. So think of like Baylor University or think of Christian schools, Dallas Baptist. They're not funded by the government, so they're known as a private school. Now, the benefit of a private school is that they don't have to go by the federal laws. And I don't mean they necessarily break federal laws, but what I mean is federal government's not overseeing them. So they get to incorporate like religion and different things into their systems, into their schools, because the federal government's not funding them and they're getting funded on their own. They're known as private schools. Whereas the public schools, the public colleges, they have to abide by federal law for schooling, for higher education, because they're getting funded by that. And if they didn't, they would lose their funding. So that's kind of the difference between public, private, and out of state versus in state. Okay, so we're going to go over the moderate budget for an in-state public college. So we're going to say, Texas. And this is the moderate budget. So this is across the board. This is not D1, D2. This is not specific by division. This is just an average budget, taking all of the different divisions and put the average. It's pretty much $28,000, $27,940. That's the average. And that was in 2022 to 2023. So this is a couple years old. This is like going on 3 to 4 years old. Okay. So this is important because this is the average, and this is something you need to look at to see like, oh, what can I actually afford and what is out of my price range. Any purchase that you buy, anything that you buy, you need a budget. You need to know, this is my cap. This is my max. It's like kind of like buying a house. This is my max. This is where I want to be. And this is my minimum. Like, I'm not going necessarily below this or whatever. So then you have a moderate budget for an out-of-state public school. So this is like if you lived in Texas and you decided to go to the University of Arkansas. The average across the board, across the United States, is $45,000. Okay, guys, $45,000. This is for one academic year. I also want to point out, I'm giving you this, so in a public in-state school is $28,000 for 1 year. 1 year. 1 year. And you're supposed to go there for 4 years. So times that by 4. That is over $100,000. You know how nice of a car you could buy for $28,000? I mean, we just turned in our Jeep, our Grand Cherokee. Sorry, I keep hitting my... Okay, we just turned in our Jeep, our 2021 Grand Cherokee Jeep. Very nice. Loved it. And you can sell it for this price. We could have sold it for $28,000 and gotten a year in a in-state public school paid for. Okay? So then you have a private not-for-profit college, which is like Baylor or, Wayland Baptist or Dallas Baptist or something like that. This is across the board. It's $57,500. You can buy a new car. That's for one academic year. Okay? And that is crazy how much money that is. Now, one thing I loved that Megan on our last episode, she talked about was most parents, when you're getting ready for school, they just assume that college cost the same that it did back then, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever the case is. And it doesn't, guys. When you look at a graph of how much costs for colleges has gone up, it's crazy. It's doing this. It's a steep hill. It's going up very quickly. So this tells us that our costs, the averages that I just gave you, it's combining your tuition and your fees. We're going to kind of go into detail, but it's combining your tuition and fees, your housing and meals, also known as room and board, your books and your school supplies, and then your personal and transportation expenses. So this doesn't include your decor for your apartment or your furniture, nothing like that. It's just including the rent and your meals, and it's so expensive, guys. It's so expensive. So it says, it tells us, keep in mind that the cheapest universities in the U.S. will come under these numbers. So it's just giving us an average. So, we're going to kind of go over your, tuition and fees. Okay. And it's funny because I was talking to a girl who's in college right now. She goes to our church, and she was saying that she's going to take laundry home and do laundry at home. But she lives on campus. And I said, hey, you do know you're probably paying a fee for laundry already. So you're already paying that fee. So you're going to drive home And yes, driving home and doing laundry there is free too, but you're already paying the fee to do laundry at school. And you're not having to use your gas or, your parents' water or things like that. Like, weighing the cost of, like, is it worth the drive to do laundry at home, or is it worth it the hassle of trying to do laundry with 40 other college girls or whatever? So I'm going to kind of give you, it lists some mandatory fees, which include the library. You're always going to have a library fee. You're going to have transportation, athletic facilities, and student activities, okay? Those are fees that are going to be in your bill. I highly recommend you look up all the fees that you pay for, because I don't think you realize what all you pay for. So a public in-state school is $11,000 just for tuition, okay? Now, when I went to Southern Arkansas University, I think my total bill, like my tuition and fees was around, I think, $6,000. So my total bill was actually under this $11,000. A public out-of-state college is $28,000. You just jumped. This is 1 year, guys. You just jumped from $11,000 to $28,000. That is $17,000 worth of a difference that you're paying to go out of state. Then you have a private nonprofit college, and that's right under $40,000 just for your tuition and your fees. Okay? So your housing and your meals. This really depends on, like, where you're living. Are you living on campus, off campus? Are you buying your meals separate? Do you have a card where you pay for your meals in advance and you go to the cafeteria? But it typically ranges from $12,000 for a 4-year public school to $14,000 for a private school. And also it's going to depend on, like, what you buy as food and things like that. My recommendation, y'all, is if you have an apartment and you're not paying cafeteria food, don't go eat out all the time. No, you need, yes, a couple times a month or one time a week or something like that. Yeah, I understand. No, you do not need to eat out all the time. You need to cook. You're going to save yourself a whole lot of money if you cook at home at your apartment. So, yeah, that's that. I'm kind of going to skip the other stuff that I had. So we're going to compare on this last part. We're going to compare schools. I have a D2 school, which is under the NCAA category. I have a D1 school, which is also under that category. I have a private D1 school versus a public D1 school. And I have an NAIA school. So let's look at the most cost to the fewest cost. I'm going to tell you in order. So the most cost. I just looked this up because it's close to us and I know people who go there. Baylor University. Baylor University has about 15,000 students that are enrolled. It's full enrollment. It has an acceptance rate of 51%. It actually has the lowest acceptance rate out of the 4 that we're comparing. And its graduation rate, though, is the highest, and it's 80%. Now, their net price, okay, this isn't the total price. This is just the net price, is $50,000 for 1 year, guys. 1 year you're paying $50,000. $50,000. If you went for 4 years, 50, 100, that's $200,000. And you just went for a 4-year degree. That's not even like medical school or lawyer or going to law school. It's just a 4-year degree. All right, so their in-state tuition, it says that their in-state tuition and their out-of-state tuition is the same, so, but it's $55,000. Yeah, and it says, okay, this is what's interesting, okay? Catch this. In small letters, it says median earnings, which means average earnings 6 years after graduation. 6 years, guys. This is not the day after graduation or the year after graduation. It's 6 years. Is $51,600. $51,600. median. It's the average earnings 6 years after graduation. It doesn't even cover the $54,500 that you paid for 1 year. So your 1 year salary of $51,000, maybe you're getting it because it's the median. Maybe you might be a little under and you might be over, but it doesn't even match. And it's 6 years after graduation. 6 years. I graduated in 2021 and I'm 26, which means I've been graduated for 5 years, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 5 years. So that means I wouldn't hit this salary until at least next year, maybe. Okay, that's Baylor. Okay. So then let's compare Baylor with the University of Arkansas. The University of Arkansas is a public school. Baylor's a private school. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, the University of Arkansas has 25,000. Baylor only had 15,000. So the University of Arkansas has 10,000 more. They have a higher acceptance rate of 72%, but their graduation rate is 70%, whereas Baylor's is 80%. Okay, their net price is $17,500. Y'all remember what Baylor's was? Baylor's was $50,000. Compare $17,500 to $50,000 for 1 year. Their in-state tuition versus their out-of-state tuition is about $30,000. Okay, just going to the U of A, and guess what? It says average earnings 6 years after graduation. Guess what that is? $45,000. So you have already went over like at least $15,000 over your cost for 1 year that it costed. But that's 6 years after graduation. But you're over it. So paying for your loans isn't going to be as bad of an issue. It's still going to be hard, but then Baylor. All right, so next we're going to compare Southern Arkansas University, which is a public D2 school, to Wayland Baptist University, which is a private NAIA school. Okay. So, SAU has about 27,000. Wayland has about 13,000. Wayland's acceptance rate is 54%. It's pretty low. Southern Arkansas's is 67%. Now, Wayland has a super low graduation rate. It says 19%, whereas SAU's is 46%. And I just want to note this so that way you will keep this in mind. Well, if you're, looking at graduation rates, acceptance rates, all that stuff, what really affects this is the type of people that are going to the school. So if your school usually has a low graduation rate, if your school has a low graduation rate, you might have lower income people attending that school because just from numbers and research, they have a lower rate of graduating. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and think because it's got a low acceptance rate or a low graduation rate that it's a bad school. It just is talking about the type of people that are attending that school. SAU was super affordable, so we did have a lot of lower income people attend, and that affected our scores, our graduation scores. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Now, the net price difference is that Wayland is $20,000 and SAU's is $14,000. That's the net. When you look at the costs, in-state tuition is about $10,000, which makes sense. That makes sense. It's about $10,000. $10,000. Whereas for Wayland Baptist, it's $22,000. It's $12,000 more. So, and they both have, employed after 6 years. SAU's is $35,000, which is, low. I'm not going to lie, it's low. But again, they're basing their research off of who attends the university. Well, if lower income people are attending the university, odds are they're not going to get as high paying of a job once they graduate. Whereas Wayland was, sorry guys, was 41,000. So it's substantially higher. So I just, we're comparing schools, and as I wrap this up, I hope that it was encouraging, but I really want you to research the different schools. And again, guys, at the end of the day, the most important thing with this is praying, is obeying the Lord. That's the most important thing. Going to the school that He's called you to. He's called you to a school. He's called you to a specific school for a specific reason at the specific time to meet specific people. And I think praying that and praying, Lord, lead me where you want me. And then also being bold and saying, but you're going to have to help me with paying for it. You're going to have to provide. Is okay. It is definitely okay. So I'm going to pray us out. This was kind of a short episode, but I'm going to pray us out, and I'm going to pray in Jesus' name that you will truly do research, that you will go to the school that you're called to go to, that you will pray and listen and obey the Lord. And even if that means unenrolling now, before you go to school in the fall, you still have time, which is why I wanted to do this, because you still have time. It's only the beginning of May. You don't graduate for another 20 something days. So you still have time to change your plans. And even this summer, you have time to change your plans. Okay. Even if you go there for a year and you hate it, you still have time to change your plans. So I want to encourage you with that, to know, I don't have to be stuck. I don't have to be stuck in this certain school or this certain cycle or this certain town. I can explore, I can research, and I'm going to pray that the Lord will show me and provide in Jesus' name. So, hope y'all enjoyed this episode. I really look forward to the next YouTube series that we are doing. It is Mother's Day coming up in the month of May. And so, I'm going to be doing a vlog series called Dear Mama. And we're just going to show the reality of what it's like being a stay-at-home mom. We're going to talk about motherhood. I'm going to bring different guests on. I'm really excited for it because I just want to encourage and inspire mothers who maybe had your first baby,